Fanfic Corner, presented by Jennifer. Baby makes 3. When Rayla told him she was pregnant, Callum couldn't be more happy. After almost 3 years of marriage, they were going to have a family of their own. There had been rumors among the Kingdom and Silvergrove and the other kingdoms that they were incapable of having children, and they were starting to think it was true, since they had been childless for so long despite trying. Now it seemed like everything was falling into place. Rayla woke to the mid-spring light spilling into her and Callum's room. Stretching, she got up and placed a hand on her stomach. She was already starting to show, but no one could accurately say she was pregnant. She and Callum had made the announcement about Rayla's pregnancy a few weeks after Valentine's Day, and the Kingdom and Silvergrove had rejoiced at the news. She couldn't even feel the baby move yet, but she wasn't even in her 5th month yet, which was when the midwife told her she would be able to. It was hard for her to believe she was carrying Callum's child, and that they were going to be parents, but she was extremely happy at the thought. "Hi, Midnight," she said when her pet jumped up on the bed. The 3-year-old shadow bandit had been a wedding present from Callum. He had found her on a shadow bandit hunt with Ezra, Bate, Zim, Soren, Ibis, Corvus, Commander Grun, Ran, Atari, and Lennon the day before the wedding, a tradition among the elves. They had come across Midnight's mother near the Midnight Desert, where Ran was forced to shoot her after they discovered she had been bitten by a soul-fang snake. They had then discovered Midnight, and, because she was too young to be on her own, Callum had brought her back to the Stormspire. Midnight rubbed against Rayla's side, the sunlight glinting off the metal of her green collar and her tag, the moon arcanum over the 2 towers that were the symbol of Catullus, the crest Callum had designed for their family, stating he didn't feel right claiming the royal seal for Catullus as his, since Hera was his stepfather, and he had no idea what crest his birth father's family used. "Excited about having a playmate?" Rayla asked her pet. "It's going to be a while before it can play with you." Getting out of bed, she began to get dressed. While she was unable to wear her more form-fitting clothes, Rayla was extremely happy she didn't have to wear the maternity clothes that Ophelia had sent her. At least not yet. She was also very happy that her morning sickness had stopped. She was tired of being unable to eat anything except dry toast for breakfast. Once dressed, she headed downstairs where she found Callum in the dining room. Several of the servants, both human and elf, had been assigned to the house, despite Callum and Rayla's insistence they didn't need servants, were busy going about their morning chores. "Good morning, Your Highness," said one of the servants, a female skywing elf, as Rayla joined Callum at the table. "Can I get you anything for breakfast?" "Some eggs, please," Rayla said, "with some bacon. And hash browns. And sausage. And toast." "Someone's hungry," Callum said. "Someone," Rayla replied, "is eating for two and hasn't thrown up in a week." "Your Highnesses," said a Sunfire Elf servant as Rayla and Callum were finishing their breakfast, "you have some visitors." "I wonder who it could be," Callum said as he and Rayla exited the dining room. Outside of the elf and human carpenters Callum had hired to build it, only a handful of people knew where Rayla and Callum's house was. There was Ezrin, Corvus, Ophelia, Commander Gren and his wife Kez, Anaya, Apala, Ruan, Atari, Rayla's parents, Soren, Alice, Lujane, Ibis, Amaya, and Jenna, and Bait, Ava, Zim, Fifi, Pariah, and Zuiba. Also, the house was protected, hidden from view by the same spell that hid the Silver Grove from view. A special rune was needed to enter the grounds, and Callum and Rayla only trusted it to a select group of people. "Ruan, Atari," Rayla said happily, "and you brought Artemis." The 1-year-old Moonshadow Elf looked at them. She knew who Rayla and Callum were, had known them all her life. But Rayla knew it was probably because she couldn't understand why Callum and Rayla lived together when they were a male and female. "Hi, cutie," Callum said as Ruan passed his daughter to the prince. "You are going to need the practice," the former assassin said. Callum held Artemis, and memories of holding Ezrin when he was this age came back to him. Ruan had accepted Callum into Rayla's life almost immediately. Callum assumed it had to do with the fact that he and Ezrin had forgiven him for what happened the night they and Rayla had discovered Zim's egg. "What brings you here?" Rayla asked as the four of them took a seat in the sitting room, with Artemis settled in Callum's lap, babbling happily at midnight, who was sniffing her. "We came for a visit," Ruan said, "and we have some news. Luna has agreed to carry another child for us," Atari said. "Artemis is going to have a half-sibling to play with." Luna was a friend of Ruan and Atari's, and had been a surrogate mom to Rayla when she was growing up. She had even given her a Moonstrider pup that Rayla had named Moonlily. Rayla loved Moonlily, but sadly her friend had been bitten by a soul-fanged serpent in the Midnight Desert when Nyx had set her and the Shadowpaw with them free to prevent Rayla and Callum from coming after her to get Zim back. Rayla missed her terribly, but she and Callum had gotten a pair of Shadowpaws, who Callum had named Luna and Sombra as a joke, since they were the draconic words for moon and shadow, as a wedding present from Ruan and Atari. Luna had also been the surrogate mother for Artemis, carrying her for 9 months and giving birth so her friends could have a child of their own. They had used an ancient Zadian spell, and Luna had become pregnant with Ruan's child almost 2 years ago. Now she was carrying another child for them. Luna paced unhappily in the paddock. She and Rayla hadn't gone for a ride in months, and she was getting restless. However, it wasn't just for the safety of Rayla and the baby that Rayla hadn't gone riding since she and Callum had returned from the Banther Lodge after Valentine's Day. Luna was expecting kits of her own, though she was so solidly built no one could tell. Rayla patted the Shadowpaw. "It's okay, girl," she said. "Maybe Callum can take you out for a little ride later." Luna continued to pace. Rayla knew exactly how she felt. Being pregnant might be an enjoyable experience, but it wasn't easy. Both Rayla and Luna were active, and not being able to do what they wanted was difficult. The only thing that Rayla really enjoyed about it was that she and Callum were going to finally have a child, and that Callum was waiting on her hand and foot. A low roar drew Rayla's attention to her right. There, lying in her favorite patch of sun, was Pariah. The sun dragon had traveled back to Catullus with them nearly 3 years ago and had stayed close to the castle. However, shortly after Callum and Rayla had moved into their new house, she had shown up and made a home in the cave that were practically next door. Ever since, she had been keeping a close eye on Rayla. It was like she had taken it upon herself to keep Rayla and her unborn child safe. "Hi, Pariah," Rayla said. "I bet you're loving this weather." The dragon just looked at her and then went back to sunning herself. Rayla was used to living near dragons. They made their homes all over Zadia. But it had taken Callum a while to get used to leaving the house to find a dragon outside. "She's still here?" Ran asked. "I don't think she'll be leaving anytime soon," Rayla said. "Ezrin said that she told him she has a life debt to Callum and me." "Well, dragons can be stubborn that way." Ran turned to look at Rayla. "We brought something for you and Callum." "You didn't have to do that," Rayla said. "We wanted to, and I think you'll like it," Rand said, pointing to the far side of the paddock. Rayla looked where he was pointing and smiled when she saw what was there. Or rather, who was there. "Moonlily," she said happily as the Moonstrider approached her. Moonlily lowered her head over the railing and sniffed Rayla's belly as Rayla petted her. "I thought I lost you in the midnight desert," Rayla said. "She showed up in the Silver Grove 3 weeks ago with a mail," Rand said. "Atari recognized her and thought you would want her back." "Let me look at you, girl," Rayla said. Her eyes were drawn to the Moonstrider's large belly. "What have you been up to? It looks like you got yourself into the same situation that Luna and I are in." Moonlily began lipping her hair, a habit from when she was a pup. Rayla laughed before resting her forehead against Moonlily's. It felt so good to see her old friend again. "Here you are," Callum said, coming up to the paddock. He looked at the Moonstrider on the other side of the fence. "She looks familiar." Moonlily leaned forward and began lipping Callum's hair. "Now I remember you," Callum said, gently pushing the Moonstrider's head away. Rayla laughed, running her hand against her baby bump. Their little family was definitely getting bigger. Bigger than she had thought when she told Callum she was pregnant. It was late, and Rayla should have been in bed resting. But instead, she and Callum were in the barn. Luna had gone into labor, and they wanted to be there when she had her kits. "It's okay, girl," Rayla said, stroking Luna. In the next stall, Sombra looked over the divider at his mate. Across the barn, Moonlily and her mate, Shadowrunner, tried to look over to Luna's stall. Luna whined in pain. It wouldn't be long now. Soon the first kit was born, followed shortly by its 5 brothers and sisters. All 6 Shadowpaw kits squeaked as they crawled blindly to their mother to nurse. "They're like kittens, or puppies," Callum said as they watched the kits nurse from Luna. "I thought they would have been more like fools." The stable master, a Moonshadow elf whose family raised Shadowpaws and Moonstriders back in Zadia, led a very anxious Sombra into the stall. "We're going to have to find homes for most of them. We won't be able to keep 8 fully grown Shadowpaws," Rayla said. "We can still keep 1 though, right? They're so cute." "They won't look so cute when they're running around the stable yard. But yeah, we can keep 1. The baby will be ready to learn how. By the time the baby's ready to learn how to ride, it'll be trained." "10 weeks later, the 6 Shadowpaws were running around the paddock with 6 little Moonstrider pups. Moonlily's litter born several days after the Shadowpaws. Several had been picked out by the servants and marked with colorful bridles, but Callum and Rayla had saved 4 ahead of time, plus the 2 they were keeping. They had been picked out by Soren, Ezrin, Corvus, and Ophelli, and were being sent to the palace in a few weeks, where Soren planned to train his new Moonstrider Eclipse as a soldier's mount, and Corvus planned to train his new Shadowpaw Hunter to be his partner in tracking. As for Ezran's new Shadow Paw moon dance and Ophelia's new Moonstrider lady, they were going to be trained to be a king's mount and a lady's mount. Luna and Moonlily aren't going to be happy when these little guys have to leave, Callum said as he and Rayla watched the Moonstrider pups and Shadowpaw kits chase each other around the paddock. It can't be helped, Rayla said. We can't keep 8 Shadowpaws and 8 Moonstriders. The barn and paddock aren't big enough. Hopefully having Dusk and Moonrose remain here will make things easier for them. Hopefully the baby will be a better rider than me, Callum said. Smiling, Rayla ran her hands over her swollen belly. This baby was something that everyone had been waiting for. This was Rayla's 3rd pregnancy. She had miscarried her first baby, conceived on hers and Callum's wedding night, when she was only 4 months along. Her 2nd pregnancy a year ago had been to term, but the baby had been stillborn. She could only hope that 3rd time's the charm. She felt arms wrap around her and Callum's hands slide over hers. Don't worry about it, he said, kissing her cheek. Something tells me this baby is going to make it. I've lost 2 already, Rayla said. Maybe elves and humans can't have children. Don't say that. We've beaten the odds before, and a miscarriage and a stillborn birth doesn't mean we can't have a healthy baby. You don't know that, Callum. There hasn't been a baby born of an elf and a human in over 1,000 years. Maybe never. I do. My mother had a stillborn before she had me, and a miscarriage before she had Ezran. Rayla had never known that. Of course, she hadn't told him that her mother had had a stillborn and 2 miscarriages before she was born. Maybe it wasn't the fact that Callum was a human and she was an elf that caused her to lose 2 babies. And maybe, just maybe, this one would make it. The summer afternoon was warm and sunny. Despite being a Moonshadow elf, Rayla loved days like this. Her garden was in full bloom and the scent of flowers filled the air. Looking up, she could see Dusk and Moonrose playing in the paddock. Nearby, Luna, Sombra, Moonlily, and Shadowrunner grazed while keeping a watchful eye on their children. Rayla and Callum had decided to name the baby Shadowpaw Dusk and the baby Moonstrider Moonrose. The 2 were running around the paddock chasing each other. Rayla smiled as she watched them. They were so carefree, and Luna and Moonlily were such good mothers. She laid her hand on her stomach. She only hoped that Callum was right and this baby would make it. Pariah looked around the other side of the barn. Her mate was out hunting, so she was at home tending to their cave. Rayla knew that sun dragons, like all dragons, attempted to have eggs as soon as they made it, and sun dragons had eggs much easier than storm dragons. So she had no idea why Pariah and her mate Sunfire were waiting so long since they had mated last summer. Rayla went up to the dragoness and took her muzzle in her hands. "Why are you and Sunfire waiting?" she asked, wishing not for the first time that she could talk to animals like Ezran. The dragoness simply bumped Rayla's gently with her nose. Rayla smiled and rubbed the dragoness's nose. It would have to do for an answer for now. The servants were busy going about their chores when Ophelia arrived. She came by once a week to check on Rayla and make sure that she and the baby were all right. "Cleric Ophelia is here," said one of the servants, showing Ophelia into the sitting room. Rayla looked up from her work. She had been busy sewing a blanket for Rianne and Atari's new baby. She had been expecting Ophelia. But, as a princess, and nearing the end of her pregnancy, she didn't rise to greet her. Callum had told Rayla that this happened when a baby was expected in the royal family. "Your Highness," Ophelia said, bowing. Rayla gestured to the chair across from her. Ophelia took a seat as the servant brought a tray of tea and cakes. "Lady, Moondancer, Hunter, and Eclipse are settling into the stables at the palace," Ophelia said, picking up her tea. Ophelia always started with small talk, and the Shadowpaws administrators that she, Ezrin, Corvus, and Soren had gotten from Rayla and Callum was a good starting point. The two continued to talk for a short time. "How are you and the baby feeling?" Ophelia asked, coming to the point of her visit. "We're fine. The baby keeps kicking me, though," Rayla said. "Well, from what I remember from when Queen Sarai was expecting, that's a good thing." "That's true, but it doesn't make it feel any less strange." The two women continued to talk. They'd actually been on good terms since the Battle of the Stormspire. Then Ophelia had to take her leave. As High Cleric, she had a lot to do back at the castle. Ezrin may be king, but even his father didn't run the kingdom alone. It took a lot of people to keep the kingdom running smoothly. There were all kinds of advisors and dignitaries to help Ezrin make informed decisions. Of course, Ezrin wasn't one to let others sway his decisions. He had seen what happened when Viren was King Harrow's advisor. He had manipulated him into killing Zim's father when he had decided to move on. While Ezrin loved and respected his father, he wasn't going to make the same mistakes. Rayla rose to see Ophelia out. Just because she was pregnant, and a princess, didn't mean she had forgotten her manners. After all, Rayla and Atari had raised her right. "I almost forgot to tell you, Rayla and Atari are going to have another child," Rayla said when they got to the door. Ophelia smiled. She liked Rayla and Atari. "I'll inform Ezrin," she said. "He'll want to send congratulations to them." Rayla had just returned from a trip to town when Pariah met her at the house. "Hi, Pariah," Rayla said, getting out of the carriage. The dragon gently pushed her towards the back of the house. "Where are we going?" Rayla asked. Turning the corner, Rayla saw what the dragon was up to. "A baby shower?" she said, seeing Ophelia, her mother, Jana, Kaz, General Maya, Queen Anya, and Queen Zuiba. "A little birdie told us you needed some things for the baby," Zuiba said. It was true. When Rayla had the stillborn, she and Callum had sent all the baby supplies they had received to Rurian and Hitari after learning that Luna was expecting Artemis. It was too painful to look at it after losing 2 babies. But this time was different. This time she believed, like Callum, that this baby would make it. Unlike her last baby shower, this one was more quiet. Her last one had been at the palace, since that's where she and Callum lived before Callum had this house built for her, and nearly all the noble ladies had come and treated Rayla's friends as servants. But this was so much better. Rayla and her friends talked and had a nice lunch in her garden. Having been born a commoner, Rayla liked things simple. It was also nice to see her mom. Since marrying Callum and moving to the Katalis, she didn't get to see her parents that much. Rayla had her duties in Katalis as princess, and her parents had theirs at the Stormspire as members of the Dragon Guard. They came to Katalis a few times, and Rayla and Callum visited them at the Stormspire. But now it was too difficult to make the journey. Rayla couldn't travel much now that she was in her 3rd trimester. Callum was fast asleep when Rayla shook him awake. He was up with a jolt. With Rayla so close to the end of her pregnancy, a midwife had temporarily moved into one of the spare rooms, and they went to bed every night wondering if the baby was going to come. "Rayla?" Callum said, concerned. "Is everything all right?" Rayla was clutching her stomach and seemed to be in pain. "Get the midwife," she said before wincing in pain. "It's time. The baby's coming." "Breathe, Your Highness," the midwife said. "It won't be much longer." Rayla was exhausted. She had been in labor for nearly twice as long as last time. She wanted her baby to be born and be healthy. Another contraction seized her body. She had been taught to ignore her pain, but she couldn't ignore this. She braced herself against Callum as the pain subsided. "You're doing fine, Rayla," Callum said. "Our baby is almost here." Your Highness, the midwife said, on the next contraction, I want you to push. Rayla wasn't sure if she could. She was so tired and in so much pain, but her maternal instincts were telling her to keep going. She tried to hold back her tears, but she couldn't. Suddenly, she had the feeling of something exiting her body, and a baby's cry filled the room. Congratulations, Your Highnesses, the midwife said, placing a small bundle in Rayla's arms. It's a girl. Rayla looked down at the child in her arms. Her baby was here, and she was alive and healthy. She's beautiful, Rayla, Callum said. The baby was a perfect blend of her parents. She had brown hair and 5 fingers like Callum, and 2 tiny bumps on her head where her horns would grow in. And when she opened her eyes, they were the same shade of lilac as her mother's. So you're the one who's been kicking me, Rayla said to her daughter. Do you have a name picked out? The midwife asked as she cleaned up the afterbirth. There's a tradition in my family that the firstborn child is named after one of the grandparents, Rayla said. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Callum asked. Her name is Sarai. Okay, if any of you out there have a fanfic or short story you would like me to do a reading on for Fanfic Corner or Story Corner, you can feel free to submit it at my Tumblr account, Facebook page, and or Facebook group. I will have the link for all 3 in the description section. A couple of things to keep in mind. First off, please be sure to include your name, and if you're submitting someone else's work, the name of the author. I need to be able to credit or I won't do a reading. Please try to keep them short. I like to keep my videos between 15 and 20 minutes. I will go over if I have to, and if it is extremely long, I will cut it up into parts. But that will only happen if I actually like the fanfic and the short story, and I do read them before I actually do a reading. Please keep them clean and appropriate. I will clean up and or gloss over any words and or parts that I deem inappropriate for children and sensitive audiences, but if there's too much, I won't do a reading. If it's a holiday fanfic or short story, please submit 2 months prior to the holiday and include the name and date of the holiday. This is basically to ensure that I can get the fanfic or short story up a month before that particular holiday. Finally, please be honest. If I find out that somebody has submitted a fanfic or a short story without the author's permission, or they're trying to pass a fanfic or short story off as their own, I will not only remove all corresponding videos, but I will no longer accept any fanfics or short stories from the sender.